you create your reality in all moments. And at any moment, if you notice tension within your body, you notice that you show up to a happy hour and you feel a little overwhelmed or anxious or freaked out, or you're talking to someone and you wonder, did I go too far? Did I share too much? In these moments that come to you that feel like a deep emotional hit, lean 1% into it, at least 1% into it. And if you just keep doing that, every single time you feel resistance, you lean into it instead of leaning away, your life will change. If you want to change your life, you just have to change your programs. And it takes small steps to do that. It's nothing overwhelming. I broke through all of this scarcity mindset in romance and business and starting a podcast and putting my face online because I just decided, what is the 1% action I can take every day to push past this fear? And anyone can do that.
Hello and welcome to the James Zander Trip. Today's guest is Elle Beecher. Elle Beecher is a writer, speaker, coach, community builder, and podcast host who helps people fall in love with their social and romantic lives. Every Saturday at 8 a.m., she hosts a 5-mile walk in Austin, Texas, that connects people together through deep conversation. She has hosted this weekly walk over 110 times and is expanding the walk to other cities. Elle also runs an online community designed to kickstart the day with gratitude, a 30-minute group call every weekday at 8 a.m. Central Time with members from 30 countries and 100 cities. Elle, welcome to the podcast.
I am so excited to be here with you. That was a fantastic intro, I must say. You covered all my wacky projects.
It's so great to meet you. It's our first time meeting. Thank you to Danny Miranda for connecting us. In this episode, I want to dive with you into a couple of themes: authenticity, vulnerability, self-worth and personal growth, connection and community, relationships, and social confidence. The thing that you said right before we pressed record was so gold. You said the thing that makes us feel unsafe is what connects us to other people the most. Can you expand on that a little bit?
Yes. So there's a universality to people feeling like they are alone in their experience. So if you feel like, oh, no one out there knows what it feels like to be heartbroken. No one has ever felt this level of social anxiety. No one has ever struggled this much to find romantic love. You feel so alone in that experience. But on the walks I host every week, I hear the same story from a different person, the same emotions from a different messenger.
And do they all equally feel alone in their suffering, in their struggle, in their challenge?
Yes. And so what I meant by the thing that we don't want to share is the thing that would actually connect us to people the most, is that we are all hiding these secrets that we feel so ashamed or guilty for.
Yes.
When in reality, those little edges, those stories, if you let them out into the light and brought them to the conversation, that would be the story that would make someone stop, look at you right in the eye and say, oh my God, I feel the same exact way. And those are the conversations that shift both people, that make both people feel deeply seen, deeply in the moment, like, oh my gosh, I'm not alone in the experience. Because all the emotions we've just talked about, guilt, shame, grief, anguish, are universal. But we hide them. That's what shame will do to you. You hide them under all the layers, over all the fake smiles, over the small talk. We hide them underneath there when in reality, there's a little person inside us, an inner child, or even somebody from 2-3 years ago, desperate to get out of this mask. That if you would just let them out a little bit and share a little bit more, the person you're talking to would come alive with you, help you feel seen, and you'd both go down a conversation rabbit hole together that will make you walk away saying, that conversation changed my life.
Why do we hide? Is it because of judgment? Is it because of fear of rejection? What do you see as the main reason that people are hiding those vulnerable parts of themselves? And how can we become comfortable sharing those parts that feel unsafe with others that might judge us?
I love that question. I think when we conceal any part of ourself, it's because we haven't spent enough time with it. We haven't felt the depths of that hidden part. We haven't gone into solitude, spent the time with our own self, with our own emotions, with our own stories, and turned over all the stones, inspected the moss underneath and said, you know what? This happened to me. I felt it fully. I felt the depth of this emotion. And now I'm going to tell one trusted person what happened to me. Now, this could be anyone in your life who just makes you feel comfortable to share, makes you feel safe. It could be a family member. It could be a friend. It could be a stranger. That's why the subway effect is real. That's why so many people come on the walks and end up saying, I haven't shared this in 20 years because there's something really beautiful about these connections we're making when you put yourself out there. You will be magnetically drawn to the people that you need to talk to in that moment to share exactly what you need to share in that moment if you take a leap of faith and courage. But because we don't spend enough time with our own emotions, our own stories, we judge ourselves for them. When you half feel a feeling, it feels incomplete. You don't fully understand it. So when you try to put words to it, you get emotional. You start to cry. You start to tear up. That's what you judge. You judge your expression because you haven't gone there, because you haven't felt it fully with yourself. When you try to bring it to other people, that's when the shame of, I'm taking up too much space. That's where the guilt comes in, where you're like, oh, does this person even want to, or they think I'm trauma dumping on them? Or is this inappropriate? Or why am I sharing this? I don't even know why I'm sharing this. Then you get caught up in all the mind movies and judgments of yourself. It stops you from sharing.
Wow.
You stonewall your own expression because you haven't felt it fully with yourself first.
This is hitting me so deeply because in the last couple of days, I was at Danny's retreat and there was a lot of vulnerable sharing. And the question that I had for myself was, at what point does being vulnerable turn into oversharing? Right? It's like there's times where I'm vulnerable with someone and I feel this relief of being seen. And there's other times where I'm vulnerable and even if the person is not judging, I feel more turbulence around sharing something. And what I'm noticing from your answer is that perhaps the times where I feel turbulence is because I still haven't fully processed the emotion. And so me sharing it almost too early makes the turbulence happen. What are your thoughts on this?
I think you're spot on. I think that when we go to share, and sometimes this is a surprise, by the way,
Yes.
and anytime this happens is a fantastic clue that you need to look at that area more. So anytime you have this feeling of, oh, I went too far, really investigate it, becoming a loving, curious investigator of your own experiences, of your own patterns, and understanding what were you sharing?
Mm-hmm.
You know, what emotion was coming up? Where did you feel it in your body? And how can you take the time alone with yourself to say, I'm going to go there again in my own presence, in my own time, my own energy, and I'm going to see what comes up for me. And it could be just me sitting alone with no distractions in a room for an hour. And I'm going to just put my awareness, put my focus on that memory that I felt a trigger, I felt an activation. It's like that old childhood game of Operation where you hit one little piece of the game and it lights up and buzzes and is like, ooh, that's what happens when we're triggered, right? But that next step after you get triggered is really important because you can either choose, I'm going to push down the trash, shoot some more, bury this emotion, not feel it, or I can becoming a loving investigator of my patterns and say, I'm going to take this time in this beautiful solitude to go there, to feel that story. What is unfinished here? What's unprocessed? Is there an emotion in me that's coming out sideways because I haven't taken the time by myself to feel it?
Is it better to sit with the feelings and emotions by yourself, or can there be benefit in sharing even when it feels too early as a way to process that emotion?
That's a great question. I think that there is absolutely space for both, and they usually play off each other. So what you just shared is that you had moments on the retreat where you felt like, oh, did I go too far with that? Right? It took you having the thought of, did I go too far, to actually know you need to sit with it more yourself. So in the moment, if you can approach every interaction with someone as, I am going to flow with this interaction. Like, what if I was the most loving version of myself, the most open version of myself I can possibly be? And instead of saying on the surface, I'm just going to let whatever needs to come out, come out. And if I do feel sometimes I go too far, that's great. That's a clue. And I'm going to sit with that further myself. So they play off each other like a beautiful infinite game. And you can't have one without the other. It takes these moments of severe vulnerability, being seen by another person, being witnessed, sharing something to know that, oh, like I felt that. That felt a little sticky.
Yeah, well, there was a moment yesterday I was talking with Danny. This is already after the retreat, but kind of feels like the retreat is still happening.
Always.
And we were having an amazing, deep conversation. But when I went home, there was one aspect of what I shared. I was like, oh, was I just, it felt like I was thinking out loud and I had not yet processed some things. And I was like, I hope Danny doesn't judge me for thinking out loud in this unprocessed way, even though probably Danny's the last person that would judge that.
Yeah.
But it's incredible that I had this thought, almost like shame of like, oh, I shouldn't have shared that. That was too much. How do we deal with those feelings when they come up, when you feel like you overshared or you didn't process something?
Ooh, that's a great question. So what I do personally is I call out the elephant in the room myself. So, and this is something I recommend to people on the walks in a variety of situations. Like your inner dialogue is even more vulnerable than what you shared.
Yes. Oh my God, that's so true.
Funny? So you judging yourself for sharing is the real vulnerability. Isn't it funny how that works?
I need to go to Danny and say, I judge myself for sharing something with you.
And then you're going to get somewhere. I promise. Like it's such a meta game. It's so funny. But the very fact that you noticed you judging yourself for vulnerably sharing needs to be voiced, right? So I kind of see it as just, how we just laughed about it. That's where you get somewhere, is by looking at it and saying, oh my gosh, wait, what if I were to share the fact that I'm judging myself right now? Where would that go? Right? So this is what I do myself. I'll give you an example that's very practical and it happens on the walks. So the boardwalks are completely unstructured. They're 5 miles and they're completely guided by your intuition. In the rules, I give this big speech where I go through what the walk is, how it's a playground to discover yourself, be curious about yourself and others. Everyone does bring a topic to the walk, but because it's unguided, you have to choose when to leave the conversation. You have to choose how many people you talk to, what you talk about, and you will experience a moment, especially if you have issues with boundary setting, people pleasing, sacrificing your own desires for other people. You will experience friction. You will experience discomfort, and that's the point. I want to empower people to reclaim their own agency by saying, you create your reality on the walks. If you don't want to be in a conversation, you can lovingly, with no judgment, float away at any time. Now, why is this relevant to this? What I recommend people do is if they feel that they struggle with people pleasing, they struggle with floating out of conversations, just say that in the moment. You don't have to make up an excuse for leaving. Like, oh, I really want to talk to this person. So I got to leave. Or, oh, it's been great, but I got to go do this. You don't have to make up an excuse. Just say the quiet part out loud. Say, can I be honest with you? I really struggle with knowing the right time to leave conversations. And I'm getting this intuitive urge that now is the time to go and that I should probably talk to more people. And I just want to thank you so much for being in this conversation with me. I've learned so much from you. I so admire your presence and everything we shared, but I'm going to float away now. And I'm excited to see you at the end of the walk and catch up then. And just leave. But instead of coming up with all the excuses on top of the thing, just saying the thing, saying the deepest truth, will have someone walk away from that interaction not feeling like there's a little bit something you were hiding. A lot of the time people walk away saying, oh, they just didn't like me. That's not true at all. It's just that their intuition was saying it was time to go, and it's not personal at all. Why don't you just say that?
Why don't we just say that?
That's a great question. So much conditioning about etiquette, about how to show up, about what's socially acceptable. And what's funny is all of these lessons that we've learned about how to show up is what prevents us from connecting with people deeply. Because you feel like you have to protect everyone's feelings by not telling the truth, when in reality, if you were to just look someone in the eye with love and say, I love this conversation. I honestly struggle with floating away, so I'm going to give it a try. And like, honestly, I'll let you know how it goes at the end, because it's not personal. Has nothing to do with the other person. But why don't we do that? Because I'll speak for myself. I never had it modeled for me. I never had one person in my life growing up who knew how to set very good boundaries, who knew how to speak their truth in all moments in a way that it didn't feel like a brick wall. It felt like a bridge. So there's so much relearning that needs to be done around how do you respect your agency, respect what you want in the moment, while also not shutting people out, stonewalling them, making them feel like they're a part of your experience, letting them into the truth of what you want to do. Then no one is left wondering, no one is left feeling hurt or abandoned or like you don't like them, because that's not the truth, because you're willing to share it.
So much of it is just communicating your true desires and feeling comfortable with other people having judgments on that or not, but just being truthful in the moment. What was a truth that you had to say out loud in the last year or so that illuminated something for you? What was the quiet part for you?
Wow. Okay. So I'll give you a couple of really practical ones that the walks taught me, and then I'll give you a personal one. Because life is just one big classroom. I'm constantly learning. And the lessons really started with this first story. So when I first started hosting the walks, which was in July 2022, I had never hosted an event before. I had severe social anxiety. I did not know how to set a boundary. I was deathly afraid of men, like afraid. I would walk around in public. I took walks by myself. Men would come up to me. I would talk to them for like 45 minutes. They'd ask for my number. I'd give it to them, even though I had no interest in them. I would people please my way to safety because I was so afraid of men. And so when I started hosting these walks, I had this host of unlooked at patterns that I didn't even realize I had. And nothing will expose these to you faster than bringing people together, bringing strangers together who all have different energies, different personalities, different intentions, and bring them all in one place and just see what happens. So when I hosted my first walk, which only happened because I was had two friends who I wanted to meet, and they were like, let's host a walk, just the three of us, and see who shows up. And then little do you know, it was like 8 people who showed up, and we just made a joke like, let's just post it on Twitter and keep posting and see what happens. Those two friends both left the city of Austin in the first 10 weeks of hosting, and something in my intuition said, keep going. Keep hosting these walks. I was so afraid. I had no clue what I was doing. I had never hosted an event before in my life, but I was like, you know what? This just feels like I need to keep going. Now I know it was divine. Like it absolutely needed to exist. It taught me so much. It's made such a huge impact on people's lives and mine. But by all accounts, I never would have created that on my own. Like I was basically pushed into my destiny.
Amazing. How perfect that they set up that you had your two friends first 10 weeks.
They pushed me into the arena.
Yep.
And then I danced in it.
And then they leave. And it's your show.
And so when I first started hosting the walks, I had never hosted an event before in my life. So I didn't know how to host this event. All I knew is I like to walk. If no one showed up, I would have walked the trail by myself and posted a selfie and said, walk number 3, and been totally fine. But something told me, keep showing up. Every single walk is a data point. And you'll be able to look at that walk and say, what conversation lit me up the most? What emotion did I feel? Who was my favorite attendee? And what's their profile? What's their personality? What do they feel like? What's their energy like? Where would they hang out? And it helped me. Those first 30 walks were super unstructured. There was no rules. There was no anything yet. And they taught me what I did and did not want the event to be. And to be honest with you, those first 30 walks were a nightmare.
Wow.
An absolute nightmare for me because I was so afraid, and the people that I was drawing to the experience were not people I necessarily enjoyed.
And boundaries were probably being crossed.
Yes.
People pleasing was happening.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I couldn't have a hard conversation to save my life. I was deathly afraid to like approach someone, let alone a man who I had deep fear around, and say, hey, I'd appreciate if you don't come back to the walk.
Oof.
Which is something I now say, believe it or not, every week.
Every week.
Every week.
You tell one person. Or
there's at least one every week that I will have a loving, compassionate conversation with and just lay it all out there and speak the truth to and say, listen, the intention of the event, I've noticed some things. I set ground rules for the space so that I give myself the ability to say, this feedback is rooted in the rules and also my own intuition, how I feel in the space. And at this point, I have a conversation like this every week. But when it first started, I can't even lie, like terrified to even think about having ownership of my own event, ownership of my own space. And then what did the universe give to me? It gifted me people that triggered the ever living shit out of me for so long until I finally got the courage. One of these in particular, one of these people, he triggered everything in me. He triggered feeling like my feelings around sexuality and feeling like objectified, feeling like he was crossing these weird romantic boundaries with me. He also would joke around in the space that I took very seriously. He would make other women feel uncomfortable. And I did not ask this guy not to return for over almost 2 years. I did not have the courage to have a conversation. I would avoid him like the plague every time he came. I've since talked to him about this. The deepest truth of what I felt in this dynamic with him, because it got so bad. I felt terrible because I'm thinking to myself, why can't I face this guy? And also, why does he keep coming? This is what's funny, right? Why does he keep coming to this? I'm thinking it's going to resolve itself. But here's the thing about universal patterns. The universe will keep presenting you with these circumstances, with these people, with these opportunities to say, hey, you need to break this pattern. And until you do, you're going to continue to be in pain. You're going to continue to suffer because you're doing it to yourself. Because I didn't have that conversation for almost 2 years. And he, for some reason, kept coming almost every week. He would come to the space and I would be faced with this unhad conversation. And I'd be like, spinning my wheels on it, blaming him. Why does he keep coming? This makes no sense. In reality, I could have just taken the reins and said one conversation would resolve all of this suffering. And I'm creating it within myself. So that just gives you a whole range of those first 30 walks, what the patterns I started to notice emerge within the group, within myself, is I had this deep fear of even telling the truth, of speaking the truth of this community isn't for everyone. It's open to everyone who share the values of being curious, kind, and open-minded. But if you come to the space and it doesn't feel like a fit and you're not acting according to the intention, then it's completely okay to just have a loving conversation and say, there is a community for you, but it just isn't this one. And take that ownership over the space I'm creating, not just letting anybody into your space if it doesn't feel right. Because
you're also responsible in some sense for the whole energy of the group.
Yes.
And if you're allowing one individual who you know for a fact is bringing the vibe down or affecting the vibe, that's on you as well in some sense.
Yes. And I will share something that I have seen talking to so many event hosts, community builders. Their inability to have these conversations is what drives the community to the ground and causes them to abruptly stop the work. They will stop hosting. The community will suddenly evaporate. Why is it? Because they're not willing to have these conversations. I can't tell you how many times I have had people come to me and say, I love your advice. I'm building this thing. They'll do 5 to 10 events. They start to get to some momentum. It starts scaling a little bit and they abruptly stop. Now that's for 2 reasons. This is just a theory. Number 1, you have to prime your nervous system to be able to handle holding space for this many people energetically. You have to prime your nervous system to receive this amount of attention from people. You also have to feel completely comfortable flopping and being a failure. Like those first 30 walks, I had less than 10 people coming. And for some people, that'd be very embarrassing. People who tie their worth to the attendee number, they would look at that and be like, oh, I could never. But I decided no matter who was going to come, how many people were going to come, this is a success to me if I have one conversation that shifts something for me. That was my metric. Instead of how many people are here, it's how many people had meaningful conversations that actually shifted their perspective in a positive way. And so that's one area. Now, the second area is because as they scale, the community grows, and there are all sorts of characters who get drawn to a space who think they are fitting the values, who think they are fitting the intentions. Now, everyone is operating at a very different level of self-awareness. And so what you'll run into is there will be new people coming into the community who think that they fit, this aspirational version of themselves, these values, but they do not. Their behaviors or actions are not aligned with the space. And out of fear, as the host, just like I did, you won't say anything about it. You'll just allow them to be in this space and having these bad interactions with people who are driving the people you actually want in your event away. And so it's one of those. It's either you don't have the nervous system capacity to be seen, to have the attention, to be seen failing, to be seen building from scratch, or you're unwilling to talk to people who don't fit the intention and say, I love you. I want to help you find the community that's right for you, but it's not this one.
2 questions. How do you have the difficult conversation of kicking someone out of your community? And how did you have that conversation with the guy that showed up for 2 years? And what was his reaction?
Yes. Oh my goodness. I'm so glad this is coming up because it really was one of my greatest teachers. And this person who was coming was like custom made in a lab to trigger me in so many ways. And I told him this and we joked about it. And the thing is, there's no bad blood and I love him and I'm so grateful for his presence, but it wasn't a fit.
In some sense, it was the perfect fit for you.
It was the perfect fit to teach me this lesson. And so thank you to this person because, oh my gosh, he was one of, seriously, my greatest teachers over the entire walk experience. And he is the reason for so many things. He's the reason, partially, why I created the ground rules. There were a couple in that first 30 walks where I noticed certain things happening that I did not like. Now, it wasn't just him. This was probably among 15 different incidents. People trying to sell things, people trying to promote different weird affiliate codes, people trying to pick up chicks or pick up men at the walks. He did some extreme versions of some of these rules that I created. And so in that way, he was made in a lab to trigger the ever-living shit out of me. And now we can laugh about it. If I were to run into him on the street, I would give him a hug. I have no bad blood toward this person. It's just some people, there's a place for everyone. There's a home for everybody, but it's not everywhere. And it wasn't on the walks. And things had just gone a little bit too far. And I like to give people a road to redemption if I can. That's a dramatic way of saying it, but I had a conversation with him about what I was noticing about all of this stuff I had buried for so long, and then gave an opportunity to do some repairing. And then there was another incident that happened that made me just say, listen, I need to follow my gut here, and I kindly ask that you don't return. So I'll dive into that a little bit more. But just to address what you said, you're spot on with this one conversation with this one guy, and how I handled this conversation with him is a little bit of an outlier because it had been going on so long. Most of the time, I was able to have a conversation very quickly with people once I learned how to do it. Once I got the confidence to do it, once I did the healing work to understand how do I meet people with love and have this incredibly, in some cases, awkward, uncomfortable conversation that people would rather do anything else but have. How do I learn how to do this? And then I had this conversation with this guy once I had built up so many reps of lower level, lower heaviness. It had become, because of the passage of time, so heavy with him. So I'll give you an example of a lighter conversation. So some of the rules on the walk, I share these rules in a 5-minute speech at the very beginning. So no matter how many times people have come, they hear me give this speech exactly the same every week. And it's now been 117 times. So some people could literally go into the circle, recite it for me. And so these...
Constitution.
It is. It's literally a constitution. It's based in values, because we are walking, but the values of being curious, kind, open-minded, it's like, how do you create rules around that? How do you create rules that allow the space to flourish and feel safe for people?
And encourage those values to come up.
Yes. And also create space for social feedback. Like we were talking about with awareness, so many people, and I'm incredibly passionate about this. So awareness can be taught, and so many people do not realize how they're coming across. So you could be giving someone a tremendous gift by taking the time and saying the thing. I know it's awkward, but saying how you receive them with love could change their lives.
100%. The few times in my life where someone gave me brutally honest feedback, and I hated them for a day and was grateful for a lifetime.
Exactly.
Because they told me what no one else in my circle had told me. And to finally know, oh, this is how I'm being perceived, or this is how my behavior is showing up for others. And to then have the opportunity to work on that. Immense gratitude. So as painful as that Band-Aid ripping off is for the initial moments, it's a lifetime of gratitude after.
Absolutely. And I think that those moments are harder to come by now than ever.
Absolutely.
Because we're in a courage crisis.
Oof.
Where people feel so afraid to say the thing, do the thing, become the creator of their own reality, realize that if you don't enjoy how a moment is going, you can say something to shift it at any moment. That's what the walks taught me. If you're at a happy hour, stuck in a conversation you don't want to be in, you are in full control, and you have full ability to look at that person with love and say, thank you so much for chatting with me. I'm going to float around now.
Yeah.
And leave. You are in full control. Being stuck doesn't exist. People say, I got stuck in a conversation. I used to say that all the time before the walks. You are keeping yourself stuck in that conversation. But we have a lot of people who are externalizing their agency and allowing other people to do what they want, not expressing their own desire, their own truth, and then being quote unquote stuck in the experience that they could change at any time.
And it shows up in so many places in life, the ability or the inability to voice your needs without shame, without guilt. This is what I need in this moment. I'm going to go float around.
Yeah.
How do we express our needs when we've had a lifetime of conditioning of not being able to express our needs?
For me, we had talked about this, my friendship with Danny, before we started recording, I believe. But for me, the journey started with, first of all, realizing that I was like, I'm trying everything everyone says that you need to do to heal, and it's not working. It started there for me. I was very much, whenever I hear someone in that place where they're like, okay, I gave myself 3 months to heal and it's not working yet. So like, what the fuck? And that's where I was. And if you're in that place, I know so many people resonate with that because we are in such a culture of doing, such a culture of checklists and to-do lists. And, oh, well, I went to therapy and I talked to this person and I did breath work and I did all these things. And like, why am I still feeling really, really shitty? And I was in that place. Now, the funny thing is that like, it requires a healthy balance of doing and being, just straight up being with your emotions, doing nothing, having no distractions, not having any forward motion at all, but resting and sinking into your emotions will cause them to evaporate, cause you to feel lighter. But because we want to do so much, it keeps us stuck in this perpetual state of unfinished emotions. So that's a whole nother conversation. It started there for me. I was in this place when I met Danny of, I'm doing the work. I'm doing everything everyone talks about, and it's not working. Then I meet Danny by divine intervention. It's the only thing it could have been. And Danny had this gift where he would ask me questions, just curious questions about my experience.
What would be an example of a question that Danny would ask you?
Oh my gosh. Oh, this makes me laugh because we would do this to each other. I'll give you an example of one I did to him. And then it's funny because for some reason, Danny's questions are so present and in the moment that if you just create space for someone to yap for long enough and just keep letting them yap. So that it's hard for me to even know a question that Danny asked me because like, what question did he not ask me? He asked me like all of them. Because if you let me just keep going, like I will basically therapize myself. Like I will, and we joke about this all the time. So anywho, I'll give you an example of something that I asked Danny, and this is very much how the conversations would go. So when we became very close, we met at the happy hour. He started coming on the walks. Then we started bumping into each other on the trail while walking and having these amazing, in some cases, over 6-hour conversations of just unfolding all of the layers. And I would ask him questions. He'd ask me questions. We just beautifully flow back and forth. There's like two coaches not realizing that they're coaches yet. And one conversation we had, this really kind of sums up the feeling of it. He was telling me how he had these friends in New York who all wanted to conquer a medium. And he was like, my friend Zach wants to conquer the written word, and my friend Hunter wants to conquer video, and Dylan has animations, and I have audio. And my goal is to get to Madison Square Garden and record a podcast there, and that's what I'm striving for. I just let him go and share this and just unfold. And then once he was done, I just said, Danny, do you think your medium is audio? Or is it live? Is it just simply you being exactly who you are in front of other human beings?
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to put yourself in this box. Danny, the character, Danny, the podcaster, thinking in that way limits everything you're doing to that box. You could host retreats. Now it's funny thinking about this. You could host events. You love to run. You could do a run club. This conversation is what caused all of these things.
Wow.
Where Danny realized that he was boxing himself in to a character, to an identity that he didn't need to be. He could be so much more expansive if he allowed himself to say, actually, there is no box. I am the box. And whatever I want to put my energy and focus and action towards is what I will do in all moments. I will follow excitement and not just follow the next step to getting to Madison Square Garden as a podcast host.
Someone asked Danny recently something about market fit, and Danny said, I am the market. I am the product. I am the fit.
That is exactly, if you asked me what was his answer, I could have quoted him verbatim. That is hilarious. He is the medium. That's basically what I was telling him in this conversation is it's not about the podcast, Danny. It's about you.
Yes.
People listen to this for you. They don't even listen for the guest.
Exactly.
They like you. They like your energy. They like your loving curiosity. You are the market. You are the medium. And when just simply noticing that someone has a limited frame and taking them and saying, no, let's zoom out to a bird's eye view of your experience. That's what I did for him in that moment. I lifted him from the ground to the sky and said, there's so much more that you could be doing and that you could be being without even trying. You don't have to come up with this grand retreat structure. Just show up and let it unfold. That's what you're good at.
Yes.
That's your gift. No one can do that like you can.
And that's exactly what he did at this retreat.
Exactly what he does. I'll give you a funny conversation we had. As he and his cousin were driving to the retreat, he calls me and he told me about a big pattern that he broke in his romantic life. And I don't know if he shared this on the retreat, but he was just so excited to share this with me. And I was so thrilled. And I tell him, I'm like, so Danny, this retreat, do you have any structure? Did you share any agenda with the lads? And he's like, nope.
Literally, the page said the itinerary will not be shared.
And I just laugh so hard because that is Danny's gift. Wherever he is, The energy is so felt, so powerful, so loving. There doesn't need to be some structure thing. You only do that. You only have the need to create such rigid structure when you don't trust yourself, when you don't believe that you are the value. Your energy is the currency of the event that everybody wants to feel and tap into and create a river with. And so he realizes that more than anyone else. And that, for that very reason, is why on that phone call with him, just to give you an example of one small conversation, that was the first domino that fell that helped Danny realize, wait, there's more to life than this podcast. I've been doing 3 episodes a week for years. That's crazy, right? Like, he'd been doing that for years, and one conversation
Lifted the frame.
it's all it took to lift the frame and say, wait, I'm the magic. What am I going to do with it?
And for anyone listening, you would probably tell them, you are the magic.
Yeah.
It's not the product you're making. It's not the podcast. It's not the YouTube channel. It's the energy that you bring to it. The life-giving, life force, God force that is flowing through you, channeled through you.
It's so true. And one thing I think about so often is you use the word channel. It's a perfect word because we are all, every person on earth is their own radio station. And if you allow yourself to be heard, you create in your own station, you put music up there for people to listen to, the right people
Will tune in.
will tune in and will find it effortlessly. But you have to give them an opportunity to find you and see you. And I understand how vulnerable that is because like we talked about, the things that would make people connect to you the most are the things you're most unwilling to share. But if you were to say, you know what, if I started today and I just put a camera in front of my face and I just started recording and I put it out there, even if it got 10 views, those 10 people would know you in your truest essence and in whatever that moment called for, probably get one DM from someone saying, this really resonated with me. And that one DM will lead on a path you could not imagine that will basically twist and turn your life into God knows what. And it's up to you to find out. But I see it through the frame of like following excitement. That's what you may have noticed through my bio is I'm a lot of things in one.
Do you know the Bashar formula?
What is this?
The Bashar formula is follow your highest excitement in every moment, taking it as far as you can with no insistence on the outcome and see what magic unfolds.
First of all, I love Bashar. Somehow do not know this follow excitement formula, but that is like how I live my life. I'm not kidding. So that's why I've had so many people tell me, Elle, listen, you need to niche down. You got a lot going on. And I'm just like, no, because all the things I'm doing are things that I have sustained passion for. And you know what those things are. This is what happens when people, they start a radio station, right? They like put themselves on their YouTube channel, they put videos up there, but they're doing it from a place of performance and they're doing it from a place of what do people want? What does the algorithm like?
How can I contort myself to show up in the right way for the people?
Yes. And then in that case, wait, you're not being authentic then because you are looking externally for direction on what you create. When in reality, the strongest signal just comes from you with no intervention.
And you see this with the music artists. Their first couple albums or their very first album, it's just coming from a pure place of creation. And then the more famous they get, I guess the more pressures come with the fans that have been listening to them. And you can actually see them contorting to what they think the audience wants.
Absolutely. And sometimes it's pressure from the record labels. It's pressure from people who invested in them.
Yep.
It's the same reason you see this with everything. You see this with startups who start with a very specific mission. Then all of a sudden they're pivoting 5 times. Why is that? They're trying to follow the money. They're trying to see, what do people like? Let me change the original mission. And then it loses the magic.
And it shows a lack of trust in the divine, in yourself, in God, in the universe. Because if you fully trust what I'm receiving and what I want to transmit through my radio station is exactly what's meant to be transmitted. And Danny posted such a great tweet a day or two ago, and I think you retweeted it, which was, A million people seeing something doesn't mean it's good. You thinking it's good means it's good.
Absolutely. And Rick Rubin has this incredible philosophy that everything you create should be like a diary entry.
Yes.
There's no expectation for anyone to read it, to like it, to do anything with it. If you feel like it needs to exist, then it should exist. And that's the philosophy that, I didn't even know that when I didn't even know this quote from Rick Rubin when I started doing that. Like, one of my unofficial newsletters, which is basically just on Twitter, is called Dear Diary in my head, where I will literally just make entries in my own diary for anyone to read. It's like, this is something on my awareness, or, oh, this is a story that keeps coming back to me from the past. Other people probably need to read this.
And I bet you've gotten DMs of people who read the diary entry that you thought no one would enjoy or no one would get value out of. And someone emails you and says that was the moment.
Absolutely. I have people come to me. This happened on the last walk on Saturday, actually. I was in a conversation with this woman, and she came up to me and she's like, I've never had a chance to talk to you on the walk before, but I just want you to know that there was a tweet you made like a year ago about, I'll give you a quick story. I was in a very abusive, toxic relationship romantically last year. And I knew it wasn't right. And I didn't know how to leave. I tried to leave and I kept getting hoovered back in. And I had never been in a relationship like that before. So I was just a mess. I didn't have enough alone time to process what was going on. Anytime I got time to myself, the voice would say, you need to leave. Then I'd try to leave and I'd get sucked back in. And I understand that I went through that situation to understand that perspective so I can talk about it on the relationship podcast that we have now. Now, of course, I never could have seen that coming, but I had never had a relationship like that until last year. I'm at an event, Casa de Luz, which is in a beautiful place here in Austin. And it was some type of Tantra event that I just like to explore. I just like to show up to random things and just see what happens. So I think it was actually Tantra speed dating, believe it or not. How interesting. So instead of conversations, you're like doing like physical exercises with each other. This woman kept catching my eye in the event. And I was like, okay, I noticed that she keeps looking at me and I'm just going to like send her love, from afar. I send people love in my head all the time. I'll
love that.
Literally just say like, I love you in my head all the time.
I say, bless you, or sending someone blessings, same sort of idea.
That's amazing. Exactly. So I'm sending her love in my head. Then the event ends. I go onto a hammock outside. She comes up to me and she's like, I'm really sorry if this is really weird, but I just have this feeling I need to tell you this message. And she goes on to say that my energy is designed for groups. And I didn't know who this woman was, by the way. Your energy is designed for groups, and you need to realize that the people around you need to have a full understanding of how your energy is designed, because if they expect too much one-on-one attention from you, you are not going to live to your fullest potential, and you will suffer a lot of pain with these people. And I was like, what area of my life does this apply to? And she's like, all of it, but especially romance.
Whoa.
And in my relationship at the time, our biggest source of friction was that I was a community builder who was constantly talking to new people and greeting people. And there was a lot of jealousy underlying all of our interactions. When we would go out, go to events, go to my own walks, there would be this latent, boiling anger from him that would make me shrink and make me dull my shine and dull my light in order to appease him. And when she said this to me, I was like, holy shit, I need to end it. Like, that was the sign that I was waiting for. So that's just a quick story. Sorry to derail you there.
It's all is well. All is well.
Maybe someone needed to hear that. But this woman on the walk, I wrote a tweet basically saying exactly what I just said. This woman on the walk said, that tweet, I read it at the perfect time and I ended a relationship because of that tweet. And this is a woman who comes on the walk all the time. She told me this on Saturday. She's like, I don't think I ever told you that I ended a relationship because of this one random tweet that I wrote at literally like 11 p.m. Like, random urge to write. It flooded out of me. And then look what happened. And that's just one person telling me the impact that that tweet had on them. God knows who else was moved by it in some way. I think it got over 1,000 likes. This is a long story. Never could have anticipated that. But it's these things that come from such a true place of, I'm feeling this right now. This keeps coming to me. My writing philosophy is, if something keeps coming and floating to my mind, I need to transmute it into art.
Ooh,
I need to take this idea and make it into something. So whether it's a piece of writing, whether it's a story I mentioned on our podcast, whatever it is, something I mentioned in a conversation on the walk, I will feel into whatever medium feels right. But whenever I have a looping thought these days, I realize that that's a signal of something I need to create. And even that one shift of turn your looping thoughts into art has caused a tremendous amount of peace. I can't even begin to explain to you how it's changed my life. Just instead of burying the looping thought and the emotions underneath it, saying, I'm going to actually follow this. I have this thought for a reason, and it's not to cause me pain. It's because I have this deep story turning in the back of my psyche that someone probably would relate to if I have the courage to share it.
It's a thought that wants to be born into the physical realm in some way. You remind me of Elizabeth Gilbert, who wrote Eat, Pray, Love. And when she went on a tour of the book, she kept having people come up to her and say, I had the same exact idea of visiting 3 different countries, spending 4 months in each country and writing a memoir about it. But Elizabeth Gilbert was the one that birthed the idea. She took the action. She allowed, so there's this thing where ideas are in the ether.
Yes.
And everyone's picking up on them, or certain individuals are picking up the same idea.
Yes.
Are you going to choose to let it be born through you? Or will you allow it to die on the vine?
That is so beautifully said. And it's so true. Because if you think about the collective consciousness, we're all connected energetically. We're all just living in one big energy field.
Energy soup.
Exactly. We're one big alphabet soup of energy. And we're all getting very similar downloads at the same time. That's why if you take whatever looping thought or feeling and you use it as a vehicle for creation and you have the courage to share it, you will be flooded. And I can show you my DMs with messages of people saying, holy shit, I was just thinking about that. Oh my God, like this is exactly what I need to read. Why does that happen? Because one person chose to take the thought and turn it into some medium of art for other people to find.
What would you say to someone listening to this podcast who wants to create, is afraid to create? As someone who got the courage to start her own podcast this year.
Yes. Like a month and a half ago.
What helped you on your journey? Because I imagine there was a time where you did not want to be seen online, to put yourself out there in such a way.
Ooh. So the piece of advice I would give to anybody who wants to create but isn't right now is to look at their day, their everyday, and create art that's an extension of what they're already doing. I think a lot of the time, from what stopped me from creating was this perfectionism of, it needs to look a certain way, or it's not good enough, or it's not polished enough, or it's not a high quality camera, or what am I going to talk about? And you get stuck in all of these excuses. I'll give you an example of this. So many people, when I launched the podcast, reached out to me asking, hey, what cameras do you use? And how do you decorate the background? All of those questions are an expression of anxiety for people who don't feel safe to create what they want to create. That's what I would do. If I saw someone taking bold action and people saying, oh my God, it's so funny you created this because I was thinking of doing the same exact thing, just like Elizabeth Gilbert, right? Like I was thinking of creating the same exact podcast. What cameras, what background? And then you won't see anything from them for 2 years. Mm-hmm. Why is that? The emotional readiness to be seen.
And it was never about the camera.
It was never about
the, it was never about the lights.
It's never, because I could give you a studio right now and say, sit down, hit record, and then we're going to publish it. And most people will say, not today.
One of my most viewed videos was recorded in terrible lighting in my bedroom at night with the yellow light and crappy quality. The camera was okay, but nothing like a studio. And because I told a story that was true from my life, I think it's my third most viewed video on the channel right now.
Wow.
Whereas there's been times where I book a studio with the intention to sit in a properly lit studio and record the best video ever. And I'm sitting there and I'm blank. And the energy is not there. And it's sterile. It feels not real.
Where do you think in those moments the energy is?
Ooh, what a great question. My instinct is to say the energy must be there somewhere in that moment, but I'm not seeing it, or I'm blocking it, or even something like the studio lights and the pressure of being in this environment is blocking the reception.
My theory, because this has happened to me so many times, is that the energy is stuck in the mind. It's not embodied, and that's why you can't feel the person talking. You don't feel their stories.
It's fully intellectual.
Yes, because they are thinking, we talked about earlier, like the meta game of I'm judging myself for judging myself.
Yes.
That is what people are receiving.
How will this be perceived?
How will this be perceived? Because if you ever are in a thought of, I'm sitting in the studio, how am I looking right now? Do I have a double chin? Am I making sense?
How does my hair look?
How does my hair look? Are my clothes okay? Is like my shoe dirty?
Let me adjust the angle.
Exactly. Let me adjust the angle. This is not flattering. If you're stuck in that, that's what someone is feeling. And what does that feel like? It feels like a buzzing nothingness.
And anxiety.
Of anxiety and just like, oh, well, scroll past. That is what creates lifeless transmission, lifeless communication.
I'll never forget when Kat Norton, Miss Excel, said every piece of content is a piece of energy that you're transmitting to someone. And that is why a video shot in low light, low quality, but with the embodied energy of truth flowing through you hits so deeply.
Yes.
I love this. So anytime I'm in a studio and the energy is not there, the inspiration is not there, it's because I'm in the mind rather than in the body.
Yes. And you at any time can shift that energy. This is what I learned. So I used to be that person who, and this is why I'm sharing this, a lot of people can relate to being too in their head when they go to hit record, and then they don't even want to hit record because they're like, they talk themselves out of it. So they'll say, oh, it's not good enough.
Not the right day.
Not the right day. Oh, I don't know enough yet. I'm not an expert yet, right? All of these beliefs will start circling that convince them that now is not the time, right? And that's just your inner saboteur telling you that you don't have all the resources that you already have within you. And if you were to just trust yourself to show up and to be, you will find the people, you'll find the words, you will find the flow effortlessly. So this is why I share this tactically. If I were in the studio and really truly felt all of these anxious thoughts before I recorded, I would take like 3 minutes to close my eyes and just time myself in silence. Literally just quick meditate to get all of those thoughts out and drained so that they're not staying with you in your content, because content is energy. And if you're in the mind, then people are going to receive you in the mind. People can't feel you when you're speaking. They don't have anything to connect with. That's why if you've ever watched like videos of people who are explaining something and it's like drier than a college lecturer who's been on tenure for 40 years, it's like, why does that happen? Because that person is on autopilot and they can't feel their words. And if they don't feel their words, you don't feel their words.
Yes. Wow. You remind me of something I do before I record is I'll press record and just take the first minute or so to tap into my heart.
That's amazing.
And then I speak. And then I don't have to get up to press record. It's already recording and I just cut out that first minute. But it's a way for me, I now realize from talking to you, to embody myself. And sometimes it is still difficult to find the inspiration. I guess that's probably because I'm still in the mind. It should be 3 minutes or it should be 30 minutes.
Yeah. I'll give you some other things that we do. I learned this through the project. It's called Great Morning. It's a gratitude call every weekday. Today was number 53. And over the course of doing this with a community of people from all over the world, these people all ages, everyone who comes regularly notices a massive shift in their positivity and how they view the world. People who came in very hopeless, like literally, this is my last chance at happiness, are on the other side of it 50 days later saying, I'm smiling at strangers and literally expressing my gratitude to everyone in my life and people who don't even know me, like total strangers. But what we do in this practice, which I think could add to what you're already doing to connect to your heart, is 10 gratitudes. And a lot of times when you hear about a gratitude practice, people will do 3 or maybe 5 or even just 1. So at the walks, for the sake of time, I have people share one thing they're grateful for, and I remind them that 17 seconds of truly embodied gratitude can shift us all into a more positive state. So I'll remind them of that on the walk and ask them for one thing they are truly grateful for. But how gratitude really works, because it's an embodied emotion, is that the more you talk about it, the deeper you feel it.
Yes.
And that it was what we found in our practice every day. By having people say 10 gratitudes, most people struggle to come up with one single thing they're grateful for. If you say 10, you are now resetting your way of looking at the world in terms of what am I grateful for? And you're finding gratitude in your water bottle, your access to water, your access to technology to record this podcast, this beautiful home, the tree outside, the access to nature. I see it everywhere. I can come up with things I'm grateful for off the top of my head with no hesitation and no judgment. And why I'm sharing this is because that practice is the most embodying practice that I have ever found in doing this work to get me from the mind and into the heart.
Wow.
And I will hold my heart, put both feet on the floor, breathe deeply, and do those 10 gratitudes before I speak if I really want my words to be felt and to feel my words. So if you want to add to what you're already doing of putting your hand on your heart by connecting to the gratitude of everything you're feeling in that moment, that might even make that easier for you to connect to the heart.
I have a gratitude log in Notion.
Oh, wow.
And I have a quote at the top, and it says, it's from Wallace D. Wattles, who wrote The Science of Getting Rich. It's a book that's far deeper than just about getting rich. And he says in it, gratitude alone can keep you looking toward the all and prevent you from falling into the error of thinking of the supply as limited. And to do that would be fatal to your hopes. And then I'm looking at the Wednesday, October 23 entry from today.
Wow.
And I wrote 7 things, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of the things are about Danny.
Wow.
Because I've learned you can repeat variations of the same thing you're grateful for and get even deeper emotion.
Yes.
And I remember Esther Hicks from Abraham Hicks saying that she and Jerry received a letter once from someone, and they enjoyed reading the letter so much, they're like, let's just read it again. And they would reread the same letter 15 times,
I do
20
that all
times,
the time.
and just feel the emotion. So I love that you brought this up. And I wanted to add that piece of, if you can't come up with 10 things, say the same thing 10 times from different perspectives.
Absolutely.
I'm grateful for this person because of this. I love this person because of this. I'm grateful for them being in my life. I'm grateful to experience their presence, their energy. I'm grateful for the conversation we had last night with them. And it's just layers upon layers upon layers, and the heart opening up.
Absolutely. And the most important thing about gratitude is that you're not, faking it or just saying it to say it. You feel it.
You have to feel it.
It's true. And so if it's true for you in that moment to have 10 gratitudes just about Danny, then that's amazing. Like, that's true to you in that moment. And I think a lot of times when I experience people at the beginning stages of a gratitude practice, they will be really worried about getting it wrong or doing it wrong. Or my own mom joined our call and Danny was in a group with her, and he reflected to me that she kept saying, I don't know if I'm doing this right. And that is such a common experience for people who are so in the mind that when they connect to their heart, connect to their body, it's foreign territory. They don't know how to exist in the heart and the body. I mean, it's pretty wild to think that a gratitude practice is a radical for some people. And I have gratitude even for that, for the fact that someone would say, you know what, I'm going to give this a try. I'm going to try to share 10 things off the top of my head, even though I can barely come up with one. And if you are in that position and you're a beginner to this practice, if you've never done it before, simply start by listing off these small, slight variations of one thing, one person, one moment, the water you're drinking, what's in front of you, your house, the environment you have, your safety, your access to technology, listening to this podcast, whatever you have in your reality right in front of you. If you were to just take a couple minutes a day to focus on gratitude, that alone will shift you. Even better if you do a voice note, you write it down, you share it with a friend, you even I send to Danny sometimes voice notes and just like positivity rant at him and be like, I love you so much. It's so joy producing. It's literally an infinite game of joy and abundance by just tuning into your heart and using it as an opportunity to share and have someone be like, whoa, that made my day.
And one thing I learned from Lynn Grabhorn, who wrote the book, Excuse Me, Your Life is Waiting, she would pick one thing about herself that she's grateful for, and it had to be a different thing each day. And she had this 30-day practice of every day, one thing you're grateful for.
I love that.
And it could be a physical thing. It could be a personality trait, because it's, in a sense, easier to be grateful about external things. I'm grateful for my bed. I'm grateful for the sunlight. I'm grateful for the food. But then you turn the mirror on yourself.
Yes.
It's like, how much love am I willing to give myself?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's actually funny you mentioned that, because in the practice that we do on the 8 a.m. calls, it's 10 gratitudes immediately followed by 10 affirmations. And so affirmations are really funny because just like we're talking about, everyone's their own TV channel, everyone says affirmations differently. So you learn so much by just watching someone else transmute their beliefs and feelings about themselves into words.
Yes.
And it's something so vulnerable, unexpectedly vulnerable, about declaring what kind of person you want to be to not only yourself in the mirror, but to other human beings who are locked in, listening, present, and want you to succeed.
Wow.
It turns like private practice into a public declaration.
I feel the vulnerability and the anxiety.
Yes. and that's what's so incredible is that when people first join, they're taking a gamble. I like to say that the day that people join the Great Morning Call for the first time means that they found the courage. It's the day of courage. And they said, you know what, today is the day, because it can be incredibly vulnerable to be in front of, now it's breakout rooms of 3. So in front of 2 other human beings.
To say something true.
To say the truth of your deepest 10 gratitudes and then your 10 affirmations. Now, these are things that you either want to continue to embody or you want to call in. Things are a little bit in the future that you close the gap and become. And even sharing that, and I share it every single day in this practice. In the first couple times that I did it, because I do it in all different ways, sometimes it'll be a rant and be like, why is everything always working out for me? I'm the luckiest person in the world. All the opportunities and resources and people come my way effortlessly. I don't have to force anything in my life. It comes to me in perfect timing. I fully trust. I surrender to the moment, and I understand that everything that is happening for the highest good of myself and others. And I am so grateful to show up in it. That's just one example. I call that a positivity rant. So on these calls, I never know what's going to come out of my mouth. And when I first started doing it, it was incredibly vulnerable to even share the deepest depths of my unknown affirmation rant with people.
Unprocessed affirmations.
Completely. Like, it's coming from the subconscious mind. But what you'll notice, and even just doing it, if the person listening to this doesn't currently have a gratitude practice or share affirmations out loud, the voice is so incredibly powerful.
Speaking it out loud.
Yes, because you're taking
the word,
the energy from within yourself, within your maybe looping thoughts, and you're turning it into art by way of your own voice. And even if you don't share it with others, and it's just a practice you do with yourself, you do that for 30 days. I promise you, there's a reason people say that 30 days of this practice will shift you into a different reality. If you do it 30 days consistently, you don't feel a difference, come and DM me. I've not seen one person in my practice not feel a change.
Wow. On the affirmation piece, what would be a great affirmation for someone listening to this to start implementing into their life?
Every day in every way, I get better and better.
Every day in every way, I get better and better.
If you say that one thing every day, you will feel a change. That's one of my favorite affirmations because it applies. It's like a mega affirmation. It applies to every area of your life. It applies to how you're showing up in work, in romance, in your friendships, in your relationship with yourself. It applies to everything. It contains all the other affirmations, and it is far and away the affirmation that I say personally every single day.
Every day in every way, I am getting better and better.
Yes.
Would you say this a couple times in the morning? Is it throughout the whole day? Are you saying it out loud, thinking it, both? Describe to me the routine.
I love that. So because of the practice that we host in the mornings, I say affirmations every day. And 10 of them, a lot of them, you remember like the rant that I did a couple minutes ago? That's what it's like. So I just let it come through, but that takes practice to get to the level where you're doing like a positivity rant. So if you're just starting with affirmations, you can take the one that I just said, every day in every way, I get better and better. But you can also do I am statements. That's what I would call the beginner level of affirmations. You want to make sure it feels true to you in the moment. That is the most important thing about gratitude or affirmations is we are laying the emotional foundation in our gratitude and affirmations for a new reality to take root. And that's why gratitude works. Because if you are not changing the way that you see and relate to the world around you, if you are not seeing gratitude or what could be in the world around you, you're stuck in a story. You're stuck in a loop. And there's no way to break yourself out unless you change your mindset and you change your emotional foundation and reality. So that's what we're doing. We are day by day lifting you out of a story and changing your emotional reality. So if you do that one affirmation, just say that every day, or you trust yourself enough to just follow the flow on I am statements.
Can you give me a couple that come up to you?
Of course. So 2 that I say every day are I am loved exactly as I am. I am enough exactly as I am. And then whatever comes after that is pure flow. So I'll just let you know whatever ones are coming to me in this moment. I am powerful. I am a vessel of creation in all moments. I am God. I am a vessel where creativity and light and love and energy flow in all moments. I am a magnet for miracles. I draw everything, people, resources, opportunities to me effortlessly without even trying. And here we are sitting in one right now because you reached out to me to do this podcast. So this is what I'm talking about.
Yes.
You say these things enough and it happens. It just, you create it. They say the word, manifest, which I think is a pop psychology, hot button word. And they'll be like, oh, manifestation isn't real. It's real. All manifesting is believing in your own emotional reality so much that it's destined to happen.
Ooh, oh, I love that. Believing your emotional reality so much it's destined to happen. It's a knowing.
It's a deepest knowing. It is a belief. It is unchangeable. No matter if someone were to look you dead in the face and say, that's not going to happen. You're like, what do you mean? I see evidence of my emotional reality every day.
Ooh, I see evidence of my emotional reality every day. This is gold. This is gold.
I'm so glad.
It's not the intellectual reality. And it's not the I wish it was reality.
Yes.
It's the emotional reality. And this is why gratitude has such a profound effect. Because when you are in gratitude, you're always looking at the world with a more than enough frame.
Yes.
More than enough, an abundance of look at the beauty of this, look at the pleasure of that. And so your emotional reality is calling in more of that, more of that, more of that.
Yes, exactly. Because you attract to you what you are. You attract to you what matches your emotional reality. So if you don't have a gratitude practice or even just eyes to see gratitude in your life, then you are going to continuously call in opportunities of scarcity because that's what you're feeling. So if you wake up saying, nothing ever goes my way, guess how your day's going to go? You're probably going to get stuck in traffic. You're probably going to honk at things and you're going to be more angry. You're going to spill coffee on yourself. Then you're going to go to workout class and someone's going to cut you off and piss you off. And you're going to create this building emotional reality around nothing goes my way. That's why, just to go off a little tangent right here, one of the biggest things that I'm noticing over the last 2 years is how words are spells, for better or for worse.
Yes.
And if you constantly say what you do not want to happen, it will happen. If you constantly say things like, for example, I coach ambitious women to find love, where we start on every exploratory call, I will ask, like, just tell me about how you're feeling about romantic life right now. The words out of every single one of these women's mouths is, I'm convinced there's no good men left. I am looking for a unicorn who doesn't exist. The guy I'm looking for, I just don't believe he's out there. And that's exactly what they're finding. They're finding all the bad men. They're not finding their man. They are creating a reality exactly as they are speaking it. And so if you just check in with yourself and draw awareness to, like, what words am I saying? What reality am I creating? Because words are spells.
And what do you tell these women who are looking for a man, but they, based on the words they're using, you can see that they are creating the reality of scarcity. There's no one out there. This is a unicorn. How do you coach them?
Ooh. So it's funny you ask this, because this actually circles back to a question that I half answered earlier around how do I have conversations with people on the walks who aren't aligned, who aren't a good fit. I always lead with my own experience that's very similar to theirs. There was a time, to use the walks, I was incredibly socially anxious and it was affecting how I was showing up in spaces. So I have these conversations by leading with my vulnerability. I lead with things that I learned about myself that I'm seeing reflected in this person. And usually when I lead with my own experience, the person will say, oh my God, that's exactly how I feel. And now we've opened the gate to not me saying, oh, I'm going to, hit you on the wrist and say, bad, get out of here. It's like, no, I see you.
I've been there.
I've been there. Like I see you. I've been there. I want to just put this out in the open, talk about this. So with these women, I always say, sitting here in this conversation feels like I'm talking to myself from 4 years ago. And I'm having such incredible deja vu to, like, wow, we are so similar. I was saying the same things as you about men. And I now realize on the other side of that what that was doing. And the scarcity we speak is the scarcity we create in our reality. And I will literally lead with myself in order to have them know I'm not judging you. I am not judging you at all. I know the depth of your experience more than you could even imagine. That's why you were drawn to me as someone to even talk to you about this. And so this is what I would recommend if you want to see an immediate change. Anytime, if you have someone in your life who's complaining or parroting these stories to you about their bad dates and giving you that energy, making you like swim in an energy soup of scarcity, draw your awareness there and make a shift. Draw your awareness there and say, okay, instead of saying men ain't shit and there's no good men left, and I just caught myself saying that, I'm actually going to say, there's so many good men out there. My man is out there. Men are incredible and they want to make me happy. There are millions of healthy men who would want to be with me. And all I'm looking for is one. So how lucky am I, right? And it's just that shift of how you talk about your current experience is everything. So to answer your question, I'll lead with myself. I'll lead with what I did that started working for me and plant a seed. And the people who want to water that seed are the people I take on as clients. The people who don't want to water that seed or they're not emotionally ready to water it are the people who will fall away and usually come back months later. This happens everywhere. Happens in my relationship coaching work, also on the walks. Same exact path happens.
They're not ready to face the truth at that moment.
Yes.
But they've seen enough that they cannot unsee.
Yep.
And so they come back a couple months later.
Yes. And you would be, this is one of the most interesting patterns of human nature I've observed through all my projects because they're very intuitively guided. I don't invite anyone. I don't DM people and say, hey, you want to do coaching with me? I just put my work out there, and in the day that people feel like this is the right moment for me to explore this part of myself, I'm going to show up to this walk and see what happens. I'm going to book this exploratory call and see what happens. When they are in that place of courage is when they have enough emotional readiness to even explore it. But if you think about courage as a wave, you can have 30 seconds of incredible courage to book a call, to go to the walk, to try it. And then from there, you can either keep building on that courage or you can go, wait, that was way too much. I need to go back to my hole.
Like with the vulnerability.
Yes.
I shared too much.
Yes.
Let me go back. Let me contract.
Let me hide.
I don't want this person to see this.
Yes. And that is exactly. And also, it's not even, I don't want this person to see this. I don't want to see this.
Ooh.
I don't want to see myself.
I've touched something in myself that I don't want to see.
And I don't understand it. I don't know it. I haven't processed it. That is why if anyone relates to this and they notice themselves almost like bobbing up and down like a buoy.
I'm ready.
I'm ready. I'm not. I book a call. I don't show up. I go to the walk. Then I don't want to go back for 6 months. I have a conversation that really feels good. And then I judge myself. If you notice this wave within yourself, the way that you break this pattern is instead of saying, oh, just this wasn't the right time, blah, 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 distracting yourself, sit with it, rest into it. Reflect on the moment where you felt like you went too far, you felt discomfort, and sit in that for a long enough period of time to know why you were uncomfortable, what did it bring up in you, and go back to that feeling, that emotion, that memory, because this is all it is. It's just memories replaying themselves, new faces, new bodies, new experiences, the same emotional core though, and feel the feeling fully in a different way to where you can change your relation to the feeling. And instead of saying, I'm too afraid to even go there, now you've gone there. Now you've reprogrammed your experience of this feeling. When you share this one specific story, you don't have to feel that way if you sit with yourself and finish it fully.
Sometimes there's a fear that I might sit with this feeling and I will still not complete it and the turbulence will get worse. Is that ever the case? Or is it that, no, if you really sit with it long enough, it starts to lose its charge?
Ooh. So if you take the trash chute analogy, what I've found within myself is that the more you try to stuff it down and down and down and down. So think about it almost like there's an overflowing trash bin, and every time it comes up, something activates it, and like there's another piece of trash added, and it's all about to overflow, and then you're like, no, get it back down there. Like you're literally like, no. And then what happens? Maybe it stays down for a couple minutes, and then boop, like a jack in the box, right back up, right? And so what most people do in these uncomfortable moments, so I'll give an example from the walk, which is really tactical. A lot of people will come on the walk and be incredibly overwhelmed with the fact that they thought they valued deep conversations with meaning. And then when they're put into a situation where someone asks them a question, they feel completely overwhelmed to answer that question. They literally, their brain goes in a bunch of different directions. There's a girl who came to me and she was like, the first question I ever got asked on the walk was, who are you?
Oh my God.
And she literally said that one question turned into an existential crisis for her for the next month.
Oh my God.
Because she had often asked a question like that. She was like, I go to all these hot girl walks and other events and people just talk about nothing. People talk about everything they're doing, all the trips are going on, the shows that are on Netflix. No one has ever in my life asked me, who are you? And meant it in a way it's like, who are you at the depths of your soul? And that was the first question I got asked in this space, and it freaked me out. So this is an example of a girl who was confronted with herself and confronted with the moment where she knew she had not fully explored the answer to that question. And instead of having the ability to say, you know what? I'm going to go there and see what comes up. It's a panic and oh my gosh, I don't feel safe in this space. And now I'm not going to come back for 6 months.
And there's pressure to answer.
Yes. And there's pressure to answer. And so that's where when people will have these moments on the walks, that'll really cause a huge reaction in them. They go down one of two paths. They will either lean into it and really allow it to be an opportunity for them to discover themselves in the presence of someone else. And then they'll become addicted to the walk process. Like they'll literally come every single week for like 40, 50, 60 weeks and just deepen their own understanding of themselves and others, deepen their capacity to hold space for their own emotions and therefore holding space for the emotions of everyone in the space. They will serve the space, or they go down the other path on the road, which is, holy shit, I wasn't ready for that. I wasn't who I thought I was. I cannot go back to this thing in a long time. And then they will monk mode it out for months and then magically reappear as a different person, as a person who is way more willing to go there because they know that that's what's going to happen in the space. So it is incredible. It all comes down to emotional readiness. And in that 6-month period, when I asked people, and I noticed that they came once and then fell off the earth and then reappeared, I will talk to them and say, what happened? Just out of curiosity, like, what happened? They'll tell me this. I promise you, every story is the same story with different details in a different messenger. They will say a moment happened that may cause a big reaction on the walk. They didn't understand why, and they weren't ready to go there. So over the next couple months, slowly, they started looking at it on their own pace, their own time. That's different for everyone. And then once they looked at it enough, they came back, which is exactly what we've been talking about. So you expand your capacity for emotional readiness by going there, but you can spend your whole life never going there, never being emotionally ready for this work.
I love how you said lean in. Just lean into it.
Yeah.
And this is what happened at Danny's retreat. There were several moments where I could literally feel it. This is an opportunity for me to lean away from this and hide, or I can lean in, and it's scary as fuck. Yeah. And there's a group of people there watching you, judging you. So that's
in your
the story.
mind.
That's the story.
Sure, yeah.
In reality, they're all there with you.
Yep.
And every time I chose to lean in, breakthroughs would happen.
Always.
And I love the words lean in because it doesn't mean jump into the fullest depth right now or you're a failure. It just means take another step.
One more step.
Don't run. Don't step backwards. Just one tiny step forward and another one. And then sit with it for as long as you need to. And then another step. And then before you know it, you've done 5 miles.
Absolutely. Exactly. And I think what's really beautiful about what you said is, even if you're not ready to speak or you don't really know what's going on in your experience, even sharing the truth of your experience could be incredibly healing and powerful for the people in the room.
The I don't know what's going on experience?
Yeah. The experience of, am I going too far? Like, I'm overwhelmed. Because I bet you there were other people on that retreat thinking the same thing. And how connecting and healing would it have been if someone, I don't know if they did, but if someone did, if you voice that internal monologue that in some ways is more vulnerable than whatever story is being shared, right? Because that's getting to the thick of, wait, what am I feeling resistance to in this moment? Am I feeling like there's so many different things? I'll give an example. When I was growing up, I came from a very religious background. It was Roman Catholic. There were priests and very strict in mass all the time. And I became very comfortable around men in my AP classes. And I had very few women who I felt really supported me and encouraged me. And so for a long time, when I was in spaces with all women, I didn't even know how to function. So a couple years ago, I went to an event that was essentially a women's circle, and I was feeling so heavy and out of place. And like, oh my God, like my skin was crawling. And I didn't know why. I was like, I have no problem being vulnerable. I have no problem sharing these stories or answering the prompts. I realized it was because I wasn't comfortable being around all women at that time. So I share this because sometimes the resistance we feel, it's not obvious why.
Why weren't you comfortable around women?
So I had experiences in high school, multiple of them, where in some dramatic fashions, I'll give you one story. Tumblr was big when I was in high school, and I've always been a writer. So I had this poetry Tumblr, and I had won a couple of awards, and I wrote under a pseudonym. And I had only given this Tumblr to a couple of people in my high school, my best friends, and all the other followers I had were like randos. And I started getting these hate messages anonymously on Tumblr, insulting my work and terrible names, all these insults, all these slurs, comments on what I looked like, all this stuff. And I felt so torn up about these comments when I was like probably 14 that I actually figured out how to track the IP address of who was leaving these comments because I wanted to know like, who was this? And so I figured out how to like FBI reverse engineer this thing. I had set a trap, and then she like commented on the post that then allowed me to see her IP address. Ended up being my best friend who was leaving these hate comments on my Tumblr. And the moment, I swear to you, it was like a movie scene, when I saw the Google Maps location and I zoom in and in and in, and I see it's, oh my God, this is where my friend lives. Oh my God, this is her house. Oh my God. And my world came crashing down. And I realized like the person who was closest to me wanted me to fail, wanted me to hate myself, wanted to insult me and not support me. And it was like world shattering when I was a teenager. And I had it's one story, but multiple moments like that with women growing up that created a callus in my relationship with women where I didn't fully trust them because it had happened to me so many times that I had felt betrayed. I had felt like I was being my full self, but it wasn't enough, or I was too much, or I was, they wanted to take me down in some way. And so when I was sitting in that event surrounded by women who were strangers, I felt so uncomfortable. And I didn't know at the time why until day 2 of the experience, where we went around and shared, and it hit me like a brick that it was like, oh my God, I have a wound here. And I don't feel fully comfortable to be myself around women. And I at that moment, like when I first felt the resistance, I came up with everything else, right? Because the mind tries to make sense of what you're feeling. A lot of the time, though, the mind gets it wrong. So the mind will come up with what makes sense, right? But the mind and the body have two very different experiences of this world. The mind tries to keep you safe by understanding why you're experiencing what you're experiencing. It wasn't until I sat with myself and said, wait, like, when was the last time I felt this emotion? That I got back into that moment with my friend who left the anonymous hate on my Tumblr. And I was like, whoa, that is what I'm feeling.
That is still operating.
Yeah, that script that I never went back and I just let it roll off, and I stopped talking to her, and I felt really hurt, really betrayed. I never fully felt that feeling. And so now here I am sitting in front of a dozen women, feeling the feeling and misplacing it and not understanding what's happening. But I went back, understood the root, felt into it, sunk into it, leaned into it, and then my reality changed. But we're operating on scripts that we don't even understand a lot of the time.
How did you heal that particular moment of betrayal, which I felt the earth-shattering gravity of it as you described it? The person you thought was your closest friend is not only not rooting for you, but actively sending you hate.
Yes. Oh my gosh, it's amazing to feel into it, because it's one of those moments, even though this happened when I was probably 13, 14, that it was probably my first deep, dark feeling of betrayal. Like I never in a million years saw it coming. So not only did I feel betrayed, I just felt blindsided. And that created a very interesting relationship with needing to control my relationships, because I was like, I had these underlying trust issues of like, is this person actually rooting for me? That would actually cut myself off to making collaborations and connections with people, because I had this script running in the background that anyone who wanted to get close to me wasn't actually rooting for me. They wanted to see me fail. And that had been operating from that moment when I was 14 until probably a year ago. I'm not even kidding. It was operating like that for the longest time. So how did I heal it? Oh man, a combination of practices that are all free and completely within our body. So the first big thing that I found that really changed the game for me, and just even understanding where the root of these feelings was coming from, was walking without headphones. Walking with no distractions allowed me, almost like also driving in a car with no music, you start crying randomly. You get hit with these feelings of like, wait, like, why did I just get a wave of sadness?
Because they finally have space to show up.
Yes, because especially now, we have no space to feel unless you create it.
AirPods in all the time.
It's do not disturb mode on. It's in the mind and not in the body. So step one for me, when all this stuff started to come up, was when I had the awareness somehow to start going on walks without headphones. I just said, you know what? I don't want to listen to a podcast today. I don't want to listen to music. I went through this phase where I just didn't want anyone else's voice in my head, because I couldn't even hear my own voice. I was just constantly tuning myself out. So I started there. Then these memories started coming to me. And I was like, what do I do with these? So I went on my little investigation journey of like, are there different like healing modalities here in Austin that I could do? Like, what's level 2? Level 2 for me was breathwork classes in a group. I started going to these hour-long breathwork sessions because a guy on the walk started coming and told me, you know, you should join my class. It's a great way to feel emotional release of really stuck emotions. I'm like, oh my God, I have stuck emotions. So I started going. The first time I did breathwork, I sobbed in front of the whole class. I had never had that kind of a connection to my emotions, to my body, to my past. And in that session, I was like, oh my God, I don't know how I didn't know or have the awareness to do this. Why are we not taught to be connected to our breath? It's so simple. You can do it at any time. You could breathe in right as you're hearing this and breathe in for 4 seconds, breathe out for 4 seconds, and feel so much better just having that connection to the breath. So that was step 2. I did a group breathwork class 2 times a week for months. Now I do it just privately. We have like voice note breathworks that we've collected in our journey, and it's like 8 minutes long. Some of them are an hour. So breath is very much a part of my life, but that's where I started to feel all of these unprocessed, unfelt feelings. And I left a lot of those breathwork classes sobbing and feeling so good, honestly. Like feeling like, oh my God, like I hit something. I hit something that I like haven't been able to access in the longest time. So that was kind of step 2 for me. Then I started exploring all different healing modalities. I did Reiki therapy here in Austin with an incredible healer. She was able to do something called timeline therapy on me. Have you heard of it? So basically, when you find a story or a root of an emotion, for me, let's take the betrayal of my Tumblr anonymous hater, who is my best friend. I found that emotion and I was like, okay, now I understand a story from my past that is affecting the way I show up in the world. How do I not allow this to have power over me anymore? So what you do is you, in the Reiki session, go back to the memory. You visualize it in your mind, clear as day, and you want all your senses involved. I can imagine like where I was sitting in my family office with my laptop open and zooming into that Google Maps location and realizing it was her house and putting my hand to my lips and saying, oh my God, oh my God. And I just bring myself right back to that moment. And then you reprogram your emotional response to the moment. So at the time, my gut reaction was to just bury it. I didn't know what to do about it. I didn't even know how to confront her about it. I never confronted her about it. I didn't know how. So I just stopped talking to her. I never to this day have confronted her about doing that to me.
This is so similar to the guy that went 2 years to your walks.
Yes, it is.
Who you didn't confront.
Isn't that interesting? So this is why I share this, because the pattern that you do not close will repeat over and over and over again until you have the courage to. And it will just keep showing up in a different face, in a different body, in a different detail circumstance. So I had never confronted her. I never closed the loop, because my mom always told me growing up, never let them see you sweat. Never let them see that it affected you. You just walk away with your head held high. I didn't realize that advice that I learned as a child was creating open wounds for years that I never closed and allowed to scar and move from my system. And so when I realized that moment, went back to that moment and then chose differently in the visualization and timeline therapy, I would go into the memory and experience something different. So instead of keeping it as an open loop and being anxious about seeing her at school and what's going to happen, I'd actually have a healing conversation with her and let her know what I had discovered and talk to her about it and understand where she was coming from and find some level of compassion for why she was doing what she was doing, instead of making her a villain who was scary and who was out to get me, because there was probably, always is, some level of truth at the bottom of why anyone does what they're doing. Maybe I made her feel judged. Maybe I made her feel insignificant or not good enough. Maybe there was something I was doing that was affecting her negatively. And instead of coming to me, she was indirectly leaving these hate comments on my Tumblr. So we are both just indirectly communicating with each other, when what would really heal the situation is sitting down and seeing each other with compassion. So that's what I did. I went back into the memory. I kissed myself on the forehead and said, I'm so proud of you for enduring this, for handling it with the best way that you knew how in the moment. But we're going to walk up to her. We're going to go to her house and we're going to have that conversation in my own head. And to this day, I have not had a conversation with her, but I don't need to, because it feels like I have. I went back in my own mind, my own visualization, and I had that conversation with her. And that's all I needed. I needed to close the wound, give myself the closure that I had kept open for years.
Wow. I love this, and this is going to be so helpful for so many people listening to this. Go back to the original memory that created that feeling and play it out a different way. Revise it. Do what your adult self would do now. Do you think there would be any benefit at all in reaching out to her in real life and perhaps giving her a growth experience that for her might be some stuck energy?
That's an amazing question, because guess what? After years, she just looked at my LinkedIn like 2 days ago.
Oh, wow.
This is why it's wild I'm telling this story. I don't think I've ever even shared this publicly.
You can see who's looking at your LinkedIn.
Oh, yeah.
And it popped up
and
that exact person looked up your LinkedIn.
After, and I had blocked her because I was a very indirect communicator back then when I was a teenager. I blocked her on Instagram, on Twitter, on everything but LinkedIn.
Wow.
And so I go on my LinkedIn, and to my surprise, I see her name. And I'm like, wow, what are the odds of that? So the way that I see what comes next. So I kind of view everything that I do through the lens of, is it coming from power or is it coming from force? And if I tune into my body and I set an intention every time I do breath work or I go on a walk, and I ask, if I need to do something or take action in the situation, like, please send me a sign and make it undeniable. And if I feel that it would be unnatural or forced to reach out to someone, I will not. It comes from the deepest place of intuition for me anytime I reach out to someone. And so for this woman, if she reached out to me, I would respond. But in this current moment, now this could change tomorrow, I don't feel that I need to have any type of healing conversation with her, because I already did. Because I feel complete. And I also, this is a big thing, notice that it is not impacting me anymore. I don't notice any stickiness around trusting women. I don't notice any anxiety. I work with women now, which has been incredibly healing for the levels of trust to just be like, wow, this woman resonates with my energy. She trusts me. She values what I have to say. Even just coaching women has been incredibly healing for me. The walks has been healing for me. I don't notice any stickiness in that area now, which lets me know that I'm complete in that area. But if I wasn't, and it felt like, oh, wow, I got looked at LinkedIn and, maybe it's time to reach out to her, I totally would.
How crazy is it that 2 days ago, she looked up your profile and we're talking about this story now?
And I don't even know why that came up, but there's always a reason.
It's in the field.
And maybe she's listening to this.
Oh my God. Can you imagine?
Can you imagine?
She's going to look you up on Spotify and she listens to this episode and she hears your side of it.
Yes.
The heartbreak, the betrayal of that moment.
How it affected me for years. And I just never said anything. And if you're listening to this right now, I just want you to know that I forgive you, that I love you, that I understand that what you did was coming from a place of truth for you. And I apologize if I made you feel judged in our friendship, if I made you feel less than, if I made you feel any negative emotions that caused you to leave those messages on my Tumblr, because I understand that there's 50-50 split in every relationship. And I take full ownership and accountability for my role in what happened. And if you're listening to this, just know I hold nothing against you. I'm so grateful for all the memories and fun times we had together, and I forgive you.
Wow. What a conversation. What an episode.
What an episode.
I sincerely hope she finds this episode.
I honestly, now that we're talking about this, it'll happen. And I'll send you a message and say, you're not going to believe this. Because that's just how life goes these days. So now that it wasn't even in my awareness, it's probably going to happen.
Elle, what have you learned from your most recent relationship?
Oh, man. The one I'm in right now. Oh my goodness. Wow. What have I not learned? I learned so much from Cam every day. He truly there's never been any other person in my life who has made me feel so seen and loved and accepted for exactly who I am. It truly feels like we are the same soul split in half, which is crazy to say. And like, I would hear people say things like this in the past and be like, yeah, okay. But like, and I get that. I'm like, oh. But like, no, seriously. When we first met, which believe it or not, I don't know if you know the story, it's incredible. He lived in Bali for years, do you live in Bali?
I live in Bali.
Okay. I remember this. And I was like, he wanted to ask you where?
Canggu.
Okay. He was in Uluwatu? Yes. So he was there. He just randomly got the hit to move after college to Bali. He lived there for years and then randomly got the urge to move to Austin out of literally nowhere. Moved to Austin, was there for a month. And then one day he decided to walk from his apartment around the city. Who does that? Just around like some random part of Austin, not downtown, and walk into a yoga studio, buy a membership, sit in the meditation lounge where he met me. And I just so happened to be there writing a story about how strangers always come up and talk to me. Literally. And I took screenshots of this because I was like, this is unbelievable. Like I was writing this and it happened. And not only did it happen, but it was Cam. So he comes up to me. He says, hey, nice to meet you. I'm Cam and I'm writing. So I'm really focused. I just can't blow him off. And he's like, what's she writing over there? We end up having this little conversation where he's like, I'm writing a story about my walks. These two guys who come on the walks always, tell me there's something about me and Danny, funny enough, that makes them want to word vomit the truth. And I just thought that was so funny. So I'm writing about it. He goes, oh, wait, I know those walks. I heard about it on Danny Miranda's podcast. And I was like, that's one of my best friends. So then I really lock in. We ended up talking for like 3 hours, super present, super locked in. And in that conversation, we discovered that he and I struggled with all the same things growing up. We grew up in a pretty controlled environment, parent-wise. We had a mom who's very similar, kind of had like a chaotic childhood and ended up really wanting to keep us safe, really have a hand on control over us, which is coming from love. But of course, it's experienced differently as a child. And then it caused, of course, a lot of boundary issues, people pleasing, perfectionism, an unwillingness to be seen, like cringe about showing up and not being perfect within both of us. And we uncovered this within our 3-hour conversation. And we left that conversation, and the first text that he ever sent to me afterwards was, I think you changed my life today. And I have never felt so seen by a human being. So from the very first conversation I had with him, it was like, oh, I just want to be around you all the time because you get me, you are me. Like all of our experiences are the same. So we speak the same language at all times, and there's no friction. There's no force. So that's just some background. Now, what it has taught me, I think it has been so liberating to be seen so deeply and accepted so deeply by one person, and the impact that that can have on putting yourself out there. So a big reason why over the last couple of months, me and Cam met in February, I have launched so many new things is because of Cam. Because he created safety for me to be myself and not care about how it was received. Because I know when I go home, he gets me. And the power of having one person deeply see you, deeply understand you, is transformative. For me, I had launched the gratitude community, launched a podcast after years of being terrified to put myself on video, like deeply, deeply struggled and had like a panic attack every time I'd see myself recorded. Launched a podcast, mostly on video, started writing more than ever before. What else did I do? Quit my job. I took all of these actions I had been avoiding for years because I had Cam. So I think the most powerful lesson that he taught me was the transformational impact of having one person in your life who sees you deeply. And that can be a lover, that can be a coach, that can be a best friend, a family member. As long as there is one person who makes you feel like you can go ahead and do anything you want, and I'm going to be here at the end of the day saying, I see you fully and I support you fully. There's nothing like it.
Wow. The question that comes to my mind is, you mentioned 4 years ago, you were in the place where you felt no such men existed.
Yeah.
And I'm so curious, what happened in that 4-year period where you were able to tap into the new script and manifest Cam into your life?
Oh, yes. Okay. So there's a couple of layers here that I learned like by brute force of just existing and failing. So one thing, and this is actually the basis of my philosophy for coaching women and dating right now, is that I came from a very high achieving childhood that then went into college, graduated with a near 4.0. Then it went into my career. I worked at Facebook for 7 years and I recently quit. I never worked anywhere else, started there as a new grad. So I had this ingrained in my bones that I was a high achiever and needed to like steamroll my way into everything, and that I had to fight to earn my place everywhere I went, including in love. This is why I struggled so much, because as an ambitious woman, I was realizing, now this is what I learned over this 4 years, that what got me ahead in work got me behind with men. Because I was taking on the more masculine energy of doing and planning and following up and really moving forward, moving the ball down the field. And there was no space for the man to do that. And what did that do? It impacted everything. but especially attraction. So you think about polarity of masculine and feminine energies that exist within every person on earth. If you're overbalanced in the masculine, now for women, this looks like needing and being obsessed with control, controlling yourself, controlling your environment, controlling how the relationship is going. You have no relationship with surrender, no ability to just go with the flow. That doesn't exist. So this would be the kind of woman who says like, dating is a waste of time. I just need to find my person and I'm running out of time. And there are no good men out there. And when I go on dates, it's like, they're always way less, powerful or accomplished than me. And it's just like total waste of time. And that kind of energy is what a lot of high achieving, successful women, including my former self, were bringing into dating. And when you bring that energy of scarcity and fear and rushing into dating, a healthy masculine man will run away and the toxic men will come on right in because they realize that you want these things to happen fast. And true love that feels like it's coming from a place of overflow doesn't need to be forced. It doesn't need to be like, I can't stand to live in the in-between moments of surrender. I just need this to happen now. True love does not feel like that at all, but toxic love does. So that's just one small part of like what I had learned in that 4-year gap, and that philosophy, if you will, of feminine and masculine energy within all of us. And how do I bring myself, it always starts with you, more into balance by balancing my doing and my being activities, and balancing how much where I even am stepping forward in relationships as a man, as a woman. And when you bring that doing and being into balance is when you become a lighthouse for the person you're meant to be with.
What is a good balance between doing and being for a woman and for a man?
So within your own self, there should be a 50-50 balance that's constantly kind of in flow. So one thing that was really mind-blowing to me when I was looking up these Taoist philosophies and yin and yang is that the yin and yang symbol, which is the masculine and feminine energy, is a static image. But what's funny is it's not static, it's constantly flowing. So that's what a lot of people, when they see the symbol, don't realize is that it's supposed to be moving.
Right.
And that's what makes the energies work. So at all times, there is the black and white and fluid flow. And so that within yourself is doing and being energies. So one thing that Cam and I have upstairs actually is a doing and being checklist. Literally, like here's our doing activities and here's our being. And do we have an equal amount of both today? So when we answer all our emails and schedule our podcast and create timestamps for our episode, if we have 4 things on our doing list, then are we playing a video game we really enjoy? Are we going for a nice walk? Are we taking a nap? Are we cuddling?
4 things on the bean list.
Literally balance.
Wow.
And you notice the difference. And it's like, sounds really simple, but it really is that simple. As long as you bring your awareness to, am I balanced in my doing and my being? It's when people become overbalanced in one area, and it's usually in the doing, that life doesn't feel purpose-driven anymore. I feel burnt out. I feel exhausted. Those are the kind of words that you use, especially women in dating, when they are doing, like I like to say, way too much, and they're not being enough.
How does being in a relationship make you and your partner more free?
Oh my gosh, so much more free. I think that for Cam and I especially, he is such a sounding board for me. So anytime that there's a thought or a looping thought that I want to turn into art, I will just have him be my audience first. I'll be like, something just came to me and I think I need to go right now. And no matter what we're doing, or if it's in the middle of a conversation or in the middle of doing something, he'll just be like, yeah, go for it. And so freedom, I think like if he ever got a tattoo, it'd probably be the word freedom. Like it means so much to him in terms of freedom from expectations, freedom from your own levels of suffering and stories that you bog your mind down with, freedom from everything holding you back. That is like Cam's jam and my jam. So how do we make each other more free? I think we just allow ourselves to be like to follow the truest excitement, also follow the truth of the moment, whether that's us like throwing a tantrum or, and this is just funny, sometimes we get these weird feelings that come out of nowhere and we'll just like have to kind of move the energy, just energy in motion, like move it around. So we'll just dance or like literally be like, blah, 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 like literally like that, like, but loud and just let it out, or like just the weirdest expressions of ourselves. And he'll just go off and do that. And then I'll just sit there and be like, I love you, like I just truly love you in every state, whether it's you throwing a tantrum, whether it's you right here in front of me, whether it's you bringing me flowers. I love you all equally. I actually have my phone background is a picture of him as a kid.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. One thing we're working on right now. It's a funny time to be recording this, but a couple days ago, this is actually a fantastic answer. A couple days ago, I just decided to bring up that I noticed that he showers like 2 or 3 times a day. And I know, because we've been so open with each other, that we both come from controlling households and childhoods. He had a very restrictive childhood where he ate the same meal every day. Both his parents were doctors. They were very focused on his health and being almost like the optimal human being. And so he was, in a pretty restrictive environment. Part of that came with being very clean, which is why he showers so much. So I just decided to bring up to him the other day while we were, cuddling in bed, what would happen if you didn't shower for 5 days? I just wondered what would happen. And he's like, okay, I could do that. I'm like, okay, like challenge accepted. So he's doing it. This is day 3 of him not showering. And let me tell you, on day 1, because he takes a shower in the morning, a shower in the mid-afternoon, and a shower at night before bed. Day 1, just on missing 1 shower, he was starting to get wiry, starting to freak out a little bit and be like, he was agitated. I've never seen him agitated. So this was like a brand new person. We wake up the next day and he is like angry. Like we go to the sauna and he's silent. Like, when someone is so angry and heavy that their energy, you can feel it and they don't want to say anything. So it's just silent. There's a moment where he takes his foot and he kicks the back of my calf. He's never done anything like that. Now, it wasn't hard or anything, but it was just like, meh. And I'm like, what is this? Like, this is bringing up something from the past that we don't even fully understand logically. This is just a feeling of like 4-year-old Cam who felt like he had to be clean at all times and that he was dirty if he didn't shower. That's who I'm with right now.
Wow.
So now we're on day 3. Yesterday we had this moment where we go through the Chick-fil-A drive-through because I love Diet Coke. And the whole Chick-fil-A staff knows this at this point. And one of the workers was like, what should I name my cat? And was like asking us for advice on how to name the cat. What an honor, honestly. Like, thank you for trusting us with that. It's like pretty precious. You're going to have that cat for like 15 years. So we give her some ideas for names. I think we said Boots and Parker and all these cute names. And then we drive away and Cam goes, Chick-fil-A, like when you're here, you're family, which is the Olive Garden slogan. So I'm like, oh, Olive Garden. He goes, Olive Garden's the one place my parents would not let me go.
Oh.
So I turned to him and I'm like, we're going to Olive Garden for lunch because this is what we're doing.
Yes.
We are unraveling the deepest levels of conditioning we don't even know we have.
Revising the timeline.
And we also understand that every little moment like this, even the random joke he decided to make about Olive Garden's slogan, is happening for a reason.
Yes.
So we can either choose to be like, oh, that's funny and not follow it, or we can follow it.
Yes.
So we went to lunch at Olive Garden. We literally went there at 11 in the morning. And he is not showered, right? So he's like itching in his skin, like, oh my God, everyone's going to see me dirty. This is a big part of it. It's a shame, right? So we're sitting in the Olive Garden and he usually has pretty severe allergies because he grew up eating like chicken, broccoli, and rice every day. So he has allergies to a lot of different things. At Olive Garden, it would have been really bad, but he set an intention to just let go of the allergies. He was like, I can enjoy this meal, I'll enjoy every bite. We prayed over the meal. He has the whole meal. Usually his cheeks get red. He starts itching. Nothing. just because he like decided to let go. He told me while we were sitting in the car before we got into the Olive Garden, he said, I noticed that I just started having my allergy symptoms thinking about the food. I'm not even eating it. I'm just thinking about having allergies. And it's happening before I even sit down, just when we got into the parking lot. I wonder if I can just let this drain from me and let this release from me. So he did. And then the whole day yesterday, when he usually, if he eats something he's allergic to, he goes right to the bathroom and lets it rip. You know what I mean? And this time, nothing. So this is just one small example, this like experiment, if you will, for his freedom. It's like I bring something up, he chooses to follow it. And then we unravel deeper and deeper. Like what is the freest version of you? How can we bring him to life? What does he look like? What does he feel like? Today, he woke up saying to me, I feel so good. I feel so free. I feel so alive, so positive, freer than I ever have before. And I bet you it's because of this random experiment we're running on him not taking a shower for 5 days. So I don't know if someone needs to hear that out there, but it's just a perfect example of how these stories and these scripts are so unconscious until one small little conversation brings something to light, and you can take that as an opportunity, if it feels like the right time, to go there.
The amount of growth that you guys must be experiencing on a day-to-day basis, given how conscious you are, and I mean, it must be a wild ride.
It is, especially for Cam, because Cam is 24. So he came here to Austin. He did not know what he was getting himself into. In the last couple of months, he has transformed in every way. Like moved to a new place, bought a house, met me at a yoga studio, started coaching on mindset, on masculinity, on so many different things. We started so many projects together. He busted through his fear of being on camera. He started posting on YouTube. We started our podcast. He specifically has just catapulted in his growth because, like we were talking about before, he chose to lean in and not lean away. So in the moments of resistance, you have that binary choice. You can either lean in 1% more or 1% less. And if you just keep choosing to lean in a little more every time, your entire reality, like you will lean in 1 degree more and more until it's a 180. That's what happens.
What are you most grateful about having Cam in your life?
Oh my gosh. I think I'm so grateful for the level of safety that he gives me to be myself in all moments. So he is truly, and I don't say this lightly because this is thrown around a lot, but the idea of a divine masculine man and presence is something that I feel so strongly with Cam. And it's in the moments that like no one sees but me. And I swear if like people followed us around like a little camera crew and they recorded all these little moments, they would be like, wow, like this is someone who chooses the most loving option in all moments, the most generous option, like things that, of course, he knows that I'm there, but he's not performing for me. He's not doing this for me. He is truly choosing the most loving, most open-hearted, most generous choice in all moments. And that his like consistent way of showing up in the most predictable, like if I ask myself like, oh, what would Cam do in this situation? It's just the most loving option. And that level of consistency and how he shows up creates such emotional safety for me to just like be my wacky self, like an inflatable outside a car dealership. I just get to like flow, and I know he loves it. I never like judge myself, question myself. I never feel like afraid in his presence. I just feel completely safe to be myself.
Elle, it's been such a beautiful, deep conversation.
Yes.
Such a pleasure. Is there anything we haven't touched upon that you would want to share with the listener as final closing thoughts?
Wow, what a question. I think I would just take this opportunity to say, you create your reality in all moments. And at any moment, if you notice tension within your body, You notice that you show up to a happy hour and you feel a little overwhelmed or anxious or freaked out, or you're talking to someone and you wonder, did I go too far? Did I share too much? In these moments that come to you that feel like a deep emotional hit, lean 1% into it, at least 1% into it. And if you just keep doing that, every single time you feel resistance, you lean into it instead of leaning away, your life will change. All life is just a series of patterns and scripts and programs that we've been running for years and years and years. If you want to change your life, you just have to change your programs. And it takes small steps to do that. It's nothing overwhelming. I broke through all of this scarcity mindset in romance and business and starting a podcast and putting my face online because I just decided, what is the 1% action I can take every day to push past this fear? And anyone can do that. So if there's something that you are noticing within yourself of resistance, something you're avoiding, ask yourself, what would the most open-hearted, courageous, loving version of myself do in this situation? And do that. You ask yourself that in every single situation, you will break your patterns and you will create a new reality for yourself. So I just want to take it as an opportunity to reinforce that, because if you really sit with that, I promise you, in a year from now, you're going to be like, who am I?
Elle, it's been such a pleasure. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom, your energy, your presence, and your insights.
Thank you so much. This is lovely.
You've been listening to The James Zander Trip with special guest Elle Beecher. You can find all the links to her work in the show notes. If you enjoyed this conversation, send Elle a DM to tell her what was the most important lesson you learned from this episode. Follow the podcast on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts, and we'll see you in the next episode.